Welcome back for today's last session on our eIDAS international stage. We will be talking about pragmatically mastering the challenges of multinational identity proofing. And it's a pleasure to welcome the two speakers, which will join you for the next 30 minutes. Raisa Amata, Head of Regulatory Affairs from ID Now, and Johannes Leser, Managing Director at Namiral, who will also be available at our Meet the Speaker right after this session. And without further ado, Johannes, Raisa, it's a pleasure to have you here on board. The stage is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction and welcome and hello to our session. As already mentioned, my name is Johannes Leser and I'm the CEO of Namiral Germany. And I'm happy and proud to have Raisa Amata next to me. Raisa is Head of Regulatory Affairs at ID Now. She's an expert if it comes to eIDAS regulation, especially crossing EU borders. And Raisa has brought some info about the current identification schemes and how it looks like in terms of identification inside the different EU member states. Afterwards, we will discuss how we currently overcome situations where we have issues with local regulations and what does the new eIDAS regulation mean to this for the future. Raisa, it's your stage.
Thank you, Johannes. It's a pleasure to be here speaking with you and with our audience and at BidCom. This is an exciting day for all of us. Yes, so we thought we would break up the conversation in maybe two parts. So I would go into some details about the current, that slide, current identification methods that are out there that exist, and we'll talk about some of the challenges here, and then we'll talk about some of the regulatory changes that we have seen across Europe. Excuse me. And then we would show a quick demo of one of our products that is out here in 2021 being used across Europe, which is exciting. And then Johannes and I will talk about some of the issues and challenges that we see and some of the topics on the EU amendments that came out. So for ID Now as an identification remote identity verification provider, our solution is based on multiple products. What we have learned over the years is that one size does not fit all, based on European regulations in different member states and also based on our customer needs. So yes, there are still traditional face-to-face and point-of-sale methods that are out there and still being used. And then there are some of the more remote solutions, the classical being the video ident, which is a video chat based between an agent and the user. This is the classical remote digital solution that is prevalent across Europe. Then we have automated solutions like the auto ident, which relies on AI and machine learning technology to capture the obstacle data that's on the ID card and the user's face. There's bank ident, which is similar to the Nordics federated system, which relies on an existing bank identification. And that's often coupled with either a transaction fee or a qualified electronic signature to complete the identification process. And then we have the eID, which is the national ID card, such as the one in Germany and other member states. And that is based on an NFC-enabled technology where the chip data is captured either on the national ID card or a passport. There's the automated or auto ident, also with NFC. And most people see that on the screen here. We have the digital wallet, which is recently being promoted and legalized in the German laws, where a digital identity will be available and stored on a digital wallet. So these are some of the products that we have seen evolve. To the second slide, here we go. The innovations that have come across Europe over the past few years have been slower, obviously, than the technology that's evolved, which is typical for many technology sectors. What we've seen is a cautious evaluation and approval of automated solutions across Europe, which happened in stages. And I think that the COVID pandemic really pushed the need for digital services. And so we saw even more than just bank account openings, a lot of contract signing for different use cases that also needed to be done remotely. So this COVID pandemic, I think we've learned a lot of lessons from, and I think that we see that also influencing the regulations that are being evaluated. In France, earlier this year, we saw the PVID standard for automated solutions be published. There's an approval process for that. We saw Switzerland recently announce that they will have an NFC-based solution for an automated bank account opening. Portugal also has an NFC-based technology that they will accept for automated solutions. Spain also accepts automated solutions, the Netherlands, some of the Nordic countries. So we do see a definite trend. We also see this trend coming across in Germany, maybe a little bit slower than in other countries across Europe. But here, this year, also in April, the German Federal Communications Ministry, Bundesnetzagentur, issued a circular which will allow for certification for an automated solution for trust services. This is an important step because it serves maybe as a guideline for other markets and regulations within Germany where digital identification will be used. We've also seen in Germany recent announcements for changes perhaps to the Anti-Money Laundering Act, where there'll be an experimental clause that will also look at AI solutions. And so we see either approvals or evaluations and changes coming in Europe. Let's see. Yes, so what Johannes and I thought would be interesting was to sort of compare and contrast some of the more traditional solutions and give you a demo on one of the newer solutions. So the video ident is the traditional compliant solution across Europe. It's traditional and many people feel very comfortable with that because the technology is very easy to use and there is an agent throughout the entire process. Then we have those who are probably looking at more innovative solutions, different people with different needs. And here we have either a solution that's completely automated or has a hybrid solution where there is a agent at the end of the review. So based on customer needs, based on customer preferences and what the regulations will allow, we have also the auto-ident or automated system. Hopefully this demo will work. Here we go. So this demo is the auto-ident system that shows how an automated system will perform the process. So at first, the user puts in a code and gives their consent. Here we go. To begin the process, these are the privacy and data terms. And then we have the front of the ID card being verified. So the system will read the machine readable zone, will check for the type of ID document, whether it's a passport or national ID card, will read the data on there, the same for the back. Then there's an authenticity and security feature check, which reads the holograms and the inks on the ID card to make sure that it is a real card. There we go. You can see some of the holograms that were detected based on the machine learning and algorithms on there. Then we have the selfie face comparison and aliveness test, which checks for the authenticity and comparison of the person to the photo of the card, which is also done by AI. And the results are verified, and it's either completed or there's a manual review where the agent verifies the final results. So these are just a glimpse, a very brief sort of overview of the types of solutions that are out there. I can stop sharing now. There we go. And which can lead us into the rest of our conversation, Johannes.
Yes, great. Thank you very much for showing us the current status of identification schemes which are out there. And again, maybe to outline the auto identification, which you have just presented, is very new to the market. So as probably you have not seen it outside in real life because actually this is something which ID Now and Namirial came up with the last couple of weeks. And we are very proud to offer this to the whole European market. And maybe this is a good way, starting with this kind of example, to just show how complex the regulation and working in EU-regulated but still national regulated surrounding is. And so I think everybody knows that Namirial is one of the biggest European trust service providers out there, based in Italy, and with a special focus on delivering services to the different EU member states. And similar to ID Now, we are used to handle different national regulations under an European umbrella. And auto-ident is a very good example, because actually it at the beginning, I think this is not a secret, Raisa, ID Now tried to get it certified in Germany, for sure. But since the current situation we have in Germany, you can only get certified for video identification up till 1st of April. And then suddenly something new showed up. We had this Bundesnetzagentur Verfügung, which gave the allowance to use in the future auto-identification schemes to issue certificates. The only issue is that the whole thing is that much complex that it is really hard to follow. For sure, we will see some solutions in the future, but it is very much relied to the video identification schemes, not taking into account that there are big differences in between having an AI-based process or an human-based process there.
If I might add, I think you're absolutely right. And I think what we're seeing not only in Germany, but also, for example, in France and Spain, is before it becomes a completely automated process, it's a hybrid solution. The element of having human intervention is still quite important. I don't think we're at a stage yet where we can solely rely on just an automated means for everything. One day we will get there, maybe our grandchildren.
Step by step, actually, yes, you're absolutely right.
But,
and actually, this is what we already have been certified for this auto-ident with a backup check. And I think it will not take a long time to receive this without this backup check. But just coming back to the situation,
yes.
The Verfügung we have is for example, cannot be used twice for identification. So actually it is hard to get maybe later on an AML identification out of this and so on. So what has happened is that we just are using, and that's, in the mind of the European mind, as we are just using the regulation based on the different national levels, including the European regulation. So what we have done is actually, you did an assessment in another country. It was Austria, I believe. And we used this assessment then to, since there is a lack of opportunities in Germany, to go to Italy to get a certification for this kind of auto identification process, using the information of the assessment body in Austria, and getting the certification from AGID, which is the authority giving us the certification for using an identification scheme. So what we have right now is in Italy, we are allowed to issue certificates by using the ID Now identification scheme, which has an assessment body in Austria. And in the next step, we will deliver the certificate we are issuing to Germany, because actually now it's European law. The European law tells us that the certificate has to be acknowledged in every single member country. So it is easy to use this certificate then later on in Germany. So in Germany, we do want to do something else. We just want to add to this auto identification, we want to add an AML identification. How can we do this? This can be done by using a certificate plus most of the European countries, that would be enough. But in Germany, we need to add a reference transaction, 1 cent transaction, to receive at the end an AML identification, which can then be used for a bank to onboard a customer, and then later on use the signature, the certificates which we just issue, to sign, for example, the loan contract. And right now what we see, and that I think is a very good example to show how complex the whole system is in the different legal surroundings we have. We have European law, we have Italian law, we have German law. Actually, we have a bit of Austrian law as well. Yeah. And all together, has to be acknowledged to understand how we can use the ecosystem of eIDAS in Europe. And
yes,
this is the example. But maybe Raisa, you can tell me the issues from out of the perspective of an identification provider, which you face, like in Germany, exactly with this kind of identification and use cases.
You're absolutely right that there are challenges and complexities. Maybe what one vendor might perceive as a complexity or as a challenge, another vendor might say, let's use this opportunity to explore what the possibilities are. Let's see what kind of services we can offer in other countries. Take that data, use it to build better, more products. So I think it's a twofold, let's make the best out of the situation kind of scenario. And I think that that's a lot of what we see here with ID Now. We are able to meet the compliance requirements of different countries. And yes, they are complex. They can be challenging, but I think that we've perfected what we do based on the fact that we started in Germany, some of the strictest requirements, security, technology, product-wise, and we were able to offer that to our customers. What we saw from that was we were able to build something bigger, better, different to meet the other needs. So now we have a platform of products, which is ultimately what we've always wanted to do. Because like I said earlier, one size doesn't fit all. And the needs that we see in different countries also depends not just on the regulations, but on the culture of the country. Different EU countries are more comfortable using one way versus another, or the availability of a certain ID document is not as the market, it hasn't penetrated the use, for example, the national ID card or with the chip or passports with chips. So I think we also have to look at the countries that we go into, the markets that we serve, and the customers that want to use our service, and then ultimately the end user. End users don't always care about their ID or bother to read all the little details of all the forms that they have to check to say they've read it all. But at the end of the day, it's our job to make sure that when we have this connected world, it's safe and that it's secure and that we can offer our end users choices. So I think, yes, the complexity is there, it will stay there, but we've learned a way to navigate in that complexity.
Yeah. User experience is a very good topic, especially if we are looking what it is on the table from the regulation side at the moment. We have seen changes in the eIDAS regulation, and maybe I just want to point out there are two things maybe we can just have a short look at in this event. First of all, there is for sure the identity wallet, which comes up, and the second one would be that there is a major change in how identifications are seen in the eIDAS context, meaning, and especially how you can deliver a certificate by what kinds of means. And until now, and this is what we had just discussed, is that we had to go somewhere else to get the identification recognized, to use at the end a certificate in another member state where we would not able to get the identification scheme which we are using certified. So, for example, Germany and Italy. And right now there is a major change. And until now, it was always that the identification scheme was measured on a national level. This means that each and every member state had to certify by its own which identification scheme is good enough to be able to issue a certificate. And this will change now. So this means that what you can do in the future, or what at least what the law is meaning, what you can do is something else. But the law tells you, okay, you are allowed to use an assessment body report which you have received, for example, in Ireland, and go to TSP, like for example in Germany, and then the TSP has to accept, the identification scheme certified in Ireland, because there is no national concept anymore, but there is an European. So right now, I think many in our audience will say, okay, this is strange, because until now, this was the major change. And yes, looking at the timetable, having done this in 12 months is like a little bit overambitious, I would say. It's something we can maybe reach in a couple of years. But the meaning is that, for example, in a couple of countries, you were able to receive an identification by sending in a fax with your ID card front and back, and that was enough. For sure, this cannot be accepted anymore. The issue is, it was accepted until now. There are certificates existing with this kind in the background, and now we will have a change. There for sure has to be so-called implementing acts to describe what kind of schemes will be possible in the future, but nevertheless, what we will do with the legacy systems there? What is the meaning of the certificate up from the past and the future? There shouldn't be any difference. So there are a lot of questions which are still left open. The implementing act is still left open. So out of the experience, Raisa, when do you think will this kind of change happen, that we really see an European-wide possibility to use identification schemes in every country you want?
That's a great question, an ambitious question. If you're asking me for an exact date and time, I can't give that to you. I think you're right. It is an ambitious project, and there are a lot of open-ended questions. There's a great expression in English, maybe you also have it in German, you got to take a bite out of the apple somewhere, right? So I think this is taking the bite out of the apple, first bite. Yes, there was one date I saw about 2030. Let's see what we can accomplish there. But you're right, we need an implementing act to come out. We need to learn how these member states are going to dictate the framework. What will the involvement be of private industry? What kind of collaboration, cooperation will there be? Who's going to be writing these standards? Where will all of this come together to build this ecosystem framework that we're all talking about today in multiple venues here? So I think you and I had talked about this earlier, which was a great term, this identity hub that will come. where there will be a wallet, and those who want to will be able to store multiple credentials on it and use it for multiple use cases. And there will be some form of harmonization better than what exists today in the spirit of eIDAS. I think that that's going to be a while in coming. I think over the next years, we will still continue to see an ecosystem that involves what we saw today, multiple identity verification solutions, and these gradual moves towards this digital identity and wallet. And I think if we look at over the last several years, based on when ID Now first started with the video identification and where we are now in 7 years, we have a platform of products. That's amazing. Regulations usually don't change very quickly, as you and I both know. So we've been able to navigate in this world that's changing. I think the pandemic had a lot to sort of maybe not directly change the regulations, but heavily influence how we see things and moving forward. So I think that, yes, it will come in the next coming years. We'll have a clearer answer and definitions on where we're headed with this whole project. But I think it's going to be a parallel different hubs and different parallel universe here for this whole digital verification and digital identity definition.
Very good. I think this is very important information for all the customers or companies outside which want to use or are directly in front of implementing e-signatures, identification schemes, whatever you want to do at the moment. For sure, it will come definitely, but over the next 5 years, you have to plan with having a system in place. For example, very good, this Ident Hub system. So a company like ID Now, which can offer a lot of different schemes. So the user experience is very good because the user can choose. You have to be always inventing new schemes, so that we will be able to deliver, even that we know that there will be some kind of wallet in the future. In the time being, we will have some news and better ways to identify. And even if we have this wallet in place at the end, it will be identification will be still needed. But for sure, the switch from identification to authentication, and that is mainly the switch afterwards, because if you have your identification data inside the wallet, you're just authenticating anymore to let the data go out. And this will be a major change. But until then, we definitely need identification, and later on even more. And maybe this is a good part to, at the end, just touch a little bit this wallet thing, which is what's coming out. And I think there have to be, as always, we have to mention two things there. One is we have to be very careful, because actually there are different ways of how this could be implemented. So without going into detail, I think since you, as ID Now, have already invested a lot of time, money, and brain into a new solution, into a new wallet solution, which is quite out there right now. You always are relying on the situation that there will be not too high hurdles for you as a vendor to take part at this ecosystem. And this means the best would be that we would get it licensed in any way, or how do you look at the wallet thing? How can it be rolled out to the people?
I think those are great topics. I think what we are following is sort of a parallel. We're seeing what's happening in Germany with a digital wallet to be issued in Germany. I think that this will be an excellent way to see what's possible and what can be done throughout Europe and other member states. Germany has led with video identification, and the requirements that were set out in Germany to be a model for other member states. I think the cooperation that will happen between the government and private industry will be very important. I think you and I had discussed in previous conversations that's our timer. The fact that, yes, there are transatlantic technical and trade partnerships that exist. I don't think we can really ignore that as non-existent. So I think there will be a lot to tackle, a lot of cooperation and collaboration. How that's going to play out and how that's going to be defined, I think is taking shape. But I think what's taking shape here in Germany is a great step, and it's a good way for us to become involved, and then hopefully to be part of the European ecosystem as well.
Yeah, very good. Maybe this is even a teaser for our Meet the Speaker afterwards that we can talk about.
Absolutely, yes.
What is Apple doing? Last week, they have announced that they are putting the identification card in their Apple Wallet. What does this mean for the European identity wallet? Or better, we have two ecosystems we have to work with. That's iOS and Android. And only these systems will give us the possibility to use wallets in the future. So maybe that even is a very interesting part we cannot cover at the moment.
No,
Raisa,
for another time.
Yes, great for having you here. Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure talking to you as always. Now in public, not in our private mode. Yes. And for sure, I just want to thank the audience for their attention. And yes, I will just close the stage right now. I think we have heard a lot of interesting and nice things about eIDAS and identification and so on over the whole day. And I just, can invite you to our Meet the Speaker session to maybe speak a little more in deep about what Apple is doing, what does this mean for the identification schemes, and maybe you can even ask like Raisa or myself some questions you have regarding your personal identification challenge. Raisa.
Absolutely, at any time. It was a pleasure to speak with you again, Johannes, and thank you to the audience. We appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.